With the best all-inclusive vacation deals to Mexico and the Caribbean, booking your getaway with Cheap Caribbean Vacations means you have more freedom to do your deal. Whether you enjoy snorkeling, endless margaritas, and more, or simply soak up the sun and sand in a tropical paradise, Cheap Caribbean Vacations has your deal for that. Plan and book the exact getaway you want at exactly the right price for you by using our exclusive Budget Beach Finder, or find a featured all-inclusive package to Jamaica and do your deal at cheapcaribbean.com.
Good afternoon. We are doing it live right here. Mottek On Money on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. A record-shattering day for the stock market, with all three of the major averages hitting record highs for the second day in a row this week. We'll have a complete wrap-up on Wall Street coming up shortly. But first, the Israeli-Hamas war continues following the terror attack on Israel last October 7th. Los Angeles business and civic leaders of all religions came together for an event demonstrating support for Israel and support for an Israeli volunteer emergency medical service organization that provides rapid and free emergency medical first response throughout Israel. The group, United Hatzalah, mobilized like never before following the terror attack on Israel. Some of its members were killed and some were taken hostage. Heroism encouraged emerged from the terror attack. Last night, the business community came together to support United Hatzalah. The evening was led by Rick Caruso, who's joining us live here this afternoon. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for coming to the line. I'm sure you received many, many calls following that amazing gala last evening.
Frank, thank you for having me on, and it was great seeing you there last night. It was an incredible night, full of emotions of hope, obviously of concern and fear for what's happening over there. But incredibly impressive what United Hatzalah does. 7,000 volunteers. For the listeners that does not know, which actually also operates in Los Angeles, responding to emergency care needs, and has a pretty good operation near and around the Grove because of the Jewish community around there. But in Israel, they respond within 90 seconds. And, boy, on October 7th, thank God they were there because they were saving lives. And as I pointed out last night, unfortunately, 8 members, paramedics, while they were administering care and saving lives, were killed, and 2 were kidnapped and yet to be released. But the organization is literally heroic. And 1,100 people were there last night to support them and raised over $12 million, which was just fantastic.
Such a giving community and such an impressive gathering, and one huge donation after another, which you led there last evening. Of course, business leader and philanthropist Michael Milken was also honored and made a very substantial donation to the organization. And tell us about your impressions of this tremendous philanthropy you witnessed last evening.
Well, again, I was just so honored to be asked to be a co-chair. I mean, I've supported this organization. Ellie, who heads it up, who's based out of Tel Aviv, was obviously there. But I think what was really important is the support across generations, the support across cultural divides, backgrounds, ethnicities, religions. This wasn't just about also United Hatzalah saving Jewish lives. They are there saving everyone's lives, no matter what your background is, especially during this wartime that Israel is going through. And Mike Milken just gave an incredibly moving speech. And, he has done so much on his own. He's one of the great philanthropists of our time in giving to medical causes, the cure of cancer, speeding up the process to cure diseases. And he's a game changer. Miriam Adelson was there and gave a beautiful speech, who was born and raised in Israel. Obviously, incredibly generous on many, many areas throughout the United States in different causes. She's a doctor herself. And it was just a moving night. I was so thankful to have my kids there to see it, to experience it. And the Jewish community was there with just great pride, as you saw, Frank, and great energy. and great commitment, to this incredible nonprofit that is out there every day saving people's lives. And more important now than ever. And like I said, and they're doing it in Los Angeles. So I was just proud to be a co-chair and support him. And Sonny Sassoon was my fellow co-chair and did a great job in raising a lot of money.
Well, your tremendous leadership of that gala brought the entire business community together. I've never seen anything quite like it, where $12 million was raised pretty much on the spot at one gala event for United Hatzalah last evening. A very powerful gala in support of this amazing group of volunteer rescuers, not only in Israel, as you mentioned, also with a presence here in the city of Angels here in Los Angeles. And I noticed certainly people in the audience were expressing their love and admiration for you, Rick Caruso, as they were making their donations. You command so much respect among the business leaders here.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank. Listen, I was honored and touched last night by the support and the emotions and what people were saying. And I go back to this, Frank, and I think we all need to think about it in this city. We just live in the greatest region, in the greatest city in the world, period. And what last night again showed is when you give back, when you get involved, when you help others, it doesn't matter what the religion is, the background. That's a bunch of malarkey. It's about helping humanity. And this city, the greatness of this city is the diversity of this city. That's what I talked about in my campaign. And we've been so divided politically, and we've got to get past that and go back to the days where we all leaned in for what was in the best interest of the city and the people of the city. We got a lot of problems. We got a budget deficit. They're talking about not filling positions in the city or layoffs in the city. We've got a police department that's down to 7,900 people. We got homeless at a record count and growing. We got crime still rising. If the community pulls together, we can solve all of these problems. And that's what you saw last night. I agree with you, Frank. To have one dinner and raise $12 million in a room by people raising their hand, some contributions were $5,000 and others were $1 million, but most of them were smaller contributions that people were all contributing to, down, as you saw, young kids that were saying, I want to donate $100 of my money. And so that's the spirit we need in this city, all working together. Political divides, racial divides, social divides just go away. They're meaningless, useless, and they actually slow down or prevent good work that needs to be done.
It was wonderful seeing many of the kids donating bar mitzvah money and bat mitzvah money, $180, and that was very, very touching. And I have to say, the evening got off to a very touching start with that Voices of the Heart girls vocal group singing our national anthem as well as the Israeli national anthem, the Hatikva. Everyone was very stirred and was left. Some were left in tears after that, and that's when you had to get up there and start
incredible.
the evening.
Yeah, no, the girls' choir, these young girls. God, you're right, Frank. It was just incredible singing both national anthems, and both national anthems. When you look at the words, because I did before I got there, ours and the Israeli national anthem, they speak of hope and kindness and being together and strength and will to do the right thing. And that's what we need. And we certainly need it locally. But I again, just so proud of what this group does. All volunteers, 7,000 people, motorcycles, ambulances. And what a great idea. They use motorcycles for medical response to get through traffic, in addition to ambulances. But now they need bulletproof ambulances, which were donated last night also. So I would really encourage everybody to Google it, look it up, United Hatzalah, and we should be replicating and supporting that in more parts of our own country to save lives.
A wonderful volunteer group that helps everyone who needs it, and they're there in a flash. It was absolutely amazing to learn more about the group last evening, and of course, absolutely amazing to see the support. I know you drew a lot of applause on your expression for a wish for a lasting peace and will to live together in health, prosperity for the world, and you brought a lot of people together there last evening.
Yeah, well, listen, the Jewish community everywhere around the world, but the Jewish community in Los Angeles, as you know, they have a lot of concerns, and they've been hurt in their communities, and there's fear out there now, and that's just not right. And we all need to stand together, and everybody has a right to live a life that is free from fear and safe. And we can all express our differences for political views, but do it in a healthy way. So for me and my family to be there to support, that a lot to us, and we definitely wanted to do it in a very visible way, because I think so many people today, Frank, are so worried about just saying what's right because they're worried about being politically canceled. But what's right is standing next to the Jewish community and supporting them. I feel strongly about that.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, and the last time we spoke was on Election Day, and coming off of that now, I guess the votes are somehow still being counted, but we have the DA's race solidified now. You mentioned crime and homelessness, and certainly those are big issues here that the DA, the new DA or the incumbent, right? Why don't we talk about that for a moment? What's your reaction to the outcome of the DA's primary and the upcoming November election on that one?
Listen, my position hasn't changed, Frank. George Gascon is not the right person to be the district attorney. His policies have led to a situation in LA County where we have continued growing crime and violent crime like never before. And it's also led to police being discouraged.
With the best all-inclusive vacation deals to Mexico and the Caribbean, booking your getaway with cheap Caribbean vacations means you have more freedom to do your deal. Whether you enjoy snorkeling, endless margaritas, and more, or simply soak up the sun and sand in a tropical paradise, Cheap Caribbean Vacations has your deal for that. Plan and book the exact getaway you want at exactly the right price for you by using our exclusive Budget Beach Finder, or find a featured all-inclusive package to Jamaica and do your deal at cheapcaribbean.com.
Business has always been about turning a profit, making money. But can it stand for something more? Something beyond dollars and cents? We think so. We think that today, business has a higher calling, a purpose to be fair and just, to do right by their workers, customers, communities, and the environment. And it turns out companies successful doing that also do better for their bottom line. When you see the Just Capital seal, it means this company is a force for good. Visit justcapital.com to learn more.
And leaving the department, particularly LAPD, at an unprecedented rate. This whole idea, we don't have bail, people get arrested, they get immediately released. It just creates this cycle. And it's not fair to the residents of LA County. So he's got to be changed out. And, I hope more. We had a very low turnout to vote, and that's not good. But he's got to get changed out. So I really hope everybody in November gets out and votes for Nathan Hochman, and we get a new district attorney that brings some balance in, that actually holds criminals accountable for their crime, and they can be rehabilitated and all those things that we should be doing to give people a second chance. But it starts with holding people accountable and allowing police to arrest and hold people.
Rick Caruso, thank you very much for taking the call here. I'm sure you're inundated with calls following that magnificent gala last evening, which you led. Thank you very much for coming to the line. LA business and civic leader and philanthropist Rick Caruso, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon, and hope to speak with you again very soon.
Frank, thank you. California. God bless you, buddy. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. You too. To you and your team there, thank you very much. Big day for the stock market, turning now to Wall Street. Yep, another record-shattering day for the stock market today. Another round of records. Reddit today breathing new life into the market with its IPO. Investors also looking forward to Fed rate cuts later this year. At least that's the signal we got from the Fed recently. The Dow coming in for a closing gain today of 269 points, setting a record high close of 39,781. Looks like we'll have to get those 40K hats ready. Remember when 10K, well, right down the line, 10K, 20K, 30K, now maybe 40K coming up here soon. The S&P 500 advanced nearly 17 points, closing at a record high at 5,242. And the NASDAQ added 32 points, settling at 16,402. It was the first round of back-to-back record finishes, as MarketWatch notes, for all three of the major averages since November 8th, 2021. Looks like the rally was set off yesterday after that big Fed policy setting meeting and the comments from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell following the decision to hold steady on benchmark rates for the time being. Excitement around a Fed pivot to cut rates and a roaring initial public offering for Reddit, the social media platform Reddit, helped fuel the record closes for all three of the averages. Reddit in the spotlight today for the first time on Wall Street, closing up nearly 50% from its offering price of $34 a share. The S&P 500 saw some weakness, though, in its communication services sector, which closed down 0.2%, and the broad equity gauge gained 2.4% in the past 4 trading days, its biggest in 2 months. According to MarketWatch, it also marked the Dow's best 4 days of gains since November of last year. Looks like bank stocks have been moving higher lately, and expectations of 3 rate cuts from the Fed this year, with shares of Goldman Sachs moving up about 4.5%. Taking a look at what else is happening here, let's take a look at the cryptos here, for one thing, which, of course, had been setting record highs up until recently. Cryptos have been taking a breather lately, with Bitcoin right now of about $100 at $65,438, well off the record high we saw recently. Ethereum up about $2 now at $3,487. And let's see if we can bring up the Dogecoin price here as well. The price of Doge is back down to 15 cents after hitting up around 20 cents just in the last couple of weeks. Taking a look at the price of oil, which has been fueling inflation lately, coming off of highs for this year, this week. We see oil right now down 14 cents at $80.93 a barrel. Gold, which has also been hitting record highs lately, down $1.40 now at $2,183 an ounce. Among the big movers today, Micron Technologies moving up 14%. Micron Technology among the big tech names. Looks like NVIDIA might have taken a breather here today. Of course, that one has been leading the rally. Now, not only the Magnificent Seven, but now was part of the Magnificent Seven. Now it's called the Magnificent One. We see NVIDIA shares up $11, just about $11 on the day to $914.35. So a no-breather for NVIDIA. NVIDIA continues on a roll. It hit as high as $974, it looks like. So that is the all-time intraday high for NVIDIA. Today it got up to $926. Taking a look at Apple, which, as you probably heard in the news, is facing scrutiny by the government on antitrust lawsuit filed today by attorneys general. And we see Apple shares moving lower today on that news, pulling back today by about $7 to $171 and change, a drop of about 4%. Friends, people like you and me have our ear to the ground on all things business. We like to be informed and indeed well prepared. As important as finance is, I want you to have a plan in case you're hit by someone not paying attention to the road. Thinking ahead serves us well, but even still, we can get caught off guard as people are so focused on their destination that they might not have a plan if they're in an accident that is not their fault. That's why I encourage you to put my friend Attorney Clark Fielding's number in your phone. That number is 833-88-SHARK. So if you're in an accident, you'll be ready with your first strategy to make Clark Fielding your very first call. Fielding Law aims for the highest possible settlements, considering you might need long-term care, rehab, compensation for lost wages, and any ongoing physical or emotional pain. So if you're hurt in any kind of accident, call for a free consultation with Fielding Law. You can trust them. They're honest, respected, and your strategy in case you get into that unexpected accident. Motorcycle, truck, pedestrian, scooter, hit and run, boating, or bike accidents, the number to call 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes Dweezil Zappa to the Orpheum Theater in Los Angeles August 3rd. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222 and get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Call right now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Big day for the stock market. For the second day in a row, all three of the major stock market averages hit record high closes. European stocks, and looks like the markets across Asia also moved higher today. Reddit taking the spotlight, soaring in its initial public offering day, trading a debut, closing up around $50, well above its $34 IPO offering price. We did see Treasury yields settling to 4.72%, down slightly on the day. That's the one that impacts the fixed rate mortgage rates out there. I'll double check that one on the yield in the 10-year note today. Let's see now. We have the yield in the 10-year note. We did see mortgage rates move up this past week. The yield in the 10-year is at 4.26%. We did see Goldman Sachs hitting the highs we've seen in 2.5 years today. Other financial stocks advanced, including J.P. Morgan Chase and American Express. Looks like Goldman Sachs moved up 4.3% on the day to its highest close in more than 2 years. Nike moving higher, about 0.5% higher, ahead of its earnings report after the bell today. Boeing finishing flat today amid reports airline CEOs are demanding to meet with the Boeing board now to discuss recent safety issues. Western Digital, maker of computer memory hardware, getting a boost from memory chip maker Micron's earnings. Shares rose 5%. Microsoft moving higher again today, up about 1% after Microsoft unveiled its first AI laptops as the AI craze continues. In the restaurant space, Darden Restaurants down 6.5% after it said same-store sales declined last quarter at its flagship chain Olive Garden. And Paramount Global down today 5.5% after that pop yesterday amid reports controlling shareholder Sherry Redstone was not interested in private equity firm Apollo Global Management's $11 billion offer for the company's television and film studio. Shares had jumped yesterday following news of Apollo's offer. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. We're doing it live here, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast. In case you miss any shows or any part of this program, you can go to kbc.com and pull up the podcast, as well as Apple iTunes, YouTube now as well, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, voters, it looks like, have passed that measure, that big one, that'll impose strict requirements on counties to spend on housing and drug treatment programs to tackle California's homelessness crisis. Prop 1, very close race, but it looks like voters have passed it, marking the first update to the state's mental health system in 20 years. This initiative allows the state to borrow more than $6 billion to build about 4,300 housing units, half of which will be reserved for veterans, and add about 6,800 mental health and addiction treatment beds. There were opponents to this, including some social service providers and county officials, who said the change would threaten programs that are not exclusively focused on housing or drug treatment, but will keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. This at a time when the whole system here is under scrutiny following a big court hearing on Monday in federal court. Joining us live now is Susan SHELLY, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Friday nights right here on 790 KABC. Susan, thank you very much for taking the call. And I see your latest column here focuses on homelessness. It's headlined, Los Angeles' sloppy, expensive approach to homelessness collides with reality. Give us your reaction to the latest news here on homelessness this week.
Well, we're in for a huge fight over money for programs is what's about to happen, because Gavin Newsom's Proposition 1 forces the counties to give more money that they were receiving for services to the state, and it also requires them to give more money that they were using for services to these housing providers for more of these Project Home Key types of housing projects all over the state of California. Well, who's going to provide the money for the services that are being cut, and what's going to happen to the people who rely on those services? So we're just in for a huge budget fight, essentially statewide in all 58 counties, over what's going to be cut and whether taxes will be raised to replace it or whether people can't pay anymore. So this is, even though this has passed, it did not pass, as you know, with an overwhelming stamp of approval from the voters. It passed with what you would have to characterize
With the best all-inclusive vacation deals to Mexico and the Caribbean, booking your getaway with Cheap Caribbean Vacations means you have more freedom to do your deal. Whether you enjoy snorkeling, endless margaritas, and more, or simply soak up the sun and sand in a tropical paradise, Cheap Caribbean Vacations has your deal for that. Plan and book the exact getaway you want at exactly the right price for you by using our exclusive Budget Beach Finder, or find a featured all-inclusive package to Jamaica and do your deal at cheapcaribbean.com.
Every week, Michael Rosenbaum is getting deep with someone new on the Inside of You podcast.
Let's get inside of Shelly Hennick. So Obliterated's on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. I had the best time. It was challenging, but it was like the showrunners.
That doesn't always happen. Everybody's trying to make a show and you're not.
This was a dream.
It's no fun.
Genuinely. And if it wasn't, I would just keep my mouth shut and talk about something else.
Yeah, hey, it was fine. Because I've done that. I've asked people and they're like,
Yeah.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.
As intense skepticism. And so I think that all of these things will be a fight because of that.
Well, as a terrific taxpayer watchdog that you are, you certainly raised concerns about this, and certainly the feeling is everybody wants to do something about homelessness. Whether this works remains to be seen, but is there anything positive about it? Tackling mental health treatment and creating some of the programs, can we feel good about at least some of this here?
Well, the only thing I can see that's partially beneficial here is that the governor has finally asked for a partial, limited waiver from the exclusion for federal matching funds in larger facilities. Federal law since 1965 has excluded federal matching funds for mental health treatment in any facility with more than 16 beds. And as part of his grand plan to reorganize everything, he did ask for a limited waiver from that. If we can build facilities that are larger, if we could build hospitals for people who need hospital care, who need medical care, and we can get a waiver so that we can get matching funds, if people become educated to that opportunity in budgeting, I think that would be helpful, because we're leaving money on the table by not asking for a waiver, as other states have, so that they can build hospitals and larger facilities more cost effectively.
Right, and you do a great job at keeping track of how our tax dollars are spent, and it's been very disappointing based on your latest column here on how money is spent in Los Angeles by the government on the homeless crisis, yes, which continues to be a crisis. Tell us more about what came out of that hearing on Monday and where things stand at this point.
Well, this is a hearing on the settlement from the lawsuit from 2022, when the LA Alliance, a group of downtown business owners and residents, sued the city for not providing shelter and allowing people to continue to live on the sidewalks despite all this spending. So they sued, and then they settled. And it's the settlement that was in court on Monday, because surprise, surprise, the city's not living up to it. So the LA Alliance decided that they should enforce it. And they said they are owed a $6.4 million penalty because the city has not produced the documentation and the results that it promised to provide. So the judge is thinking of ordering an audit of all of LA's homelessness spending. He used the figure $600 million from before Karen Bass was elected mayor. And this year, in this year's budget, another $250 million is in the budget for her Inside Safe program. There's probably going to be an audit from the city controller of Inside Safe, because nobody knows where the money went for that. And essentially, as you know, this is the homeless industrial complex. There are hundreds of nonprofit organizations getting huge contracts from government money, which is your tax dollars, and then they pay their executives very lavishly to watch the problem get worse. And then when it gets worse, they say, well, we need more money. And that's the trouble with Proposition 1. It's funneling money essentially into this same system. And so it's very disheartening that it managed to pass, and now we're going to have to watch very closely to make sure that there are not new tax increases put on the ballot in November to try and fill the gap of all of this missing money.
And these groups that accept government funds must permit drug and alcohol use on the premises. That's the rule, right? The so-called Harm Reduction Act, or it's a misnomer again. Some people call it a harm Increase Act, and that's something that people probably may not be aware of. Tell us more about that, Shelley.
Well, this is in state law. This is the Housing First Principle, which is in state law from 2015 or 2016. It was a law written by Senator Holly Mitchell, who's now on the Board of Supervisors. She stands by it. She thinks it's a success. But here's what it says. No one can be rejected for this free housing if they're still doing drugs. You do not have to go into a treatment program. You do not have to be sober. It absolutely allows people to continue to use hard drugs in the housing that the taxpayers are providing for them. So there's two problems with that. One is it's not fair to the taxpayers to continuously force people to enable drug addiction. And worse, it's not fair to the people who do want to get clean, who are sober, who are working harder. They're not given the housing ahead of people who are using heroin and meth in the housing we're providing. So it's not fair to them. And then the outcomes are terrible because, surprise, surprise, if people don't want to quit using drugs, then putting them in government-funded housing it has a lot of problems. And so we do not have any reports on positive outcomes from these policies. In fact, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, which was founded, by the way, in 1993, promised the judge on Monday just 2 more weeks and they'll have a report on how well the outcomes are doing. Really? Just 2 more weeks? It's been since 1993, and we don't know what outcomes this is producing. All it's producing is giant salaries for people at these nonprofits and even at LASA itself, the government agency, huge salaries. And what's being done for the people who really need help? Well, we're going to be cutting their funding. So this is really disturbing.
On the air live with Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Friday nights here in 790 KABC. So that is the case with these organizations that do accept government funds, but there certainly are some groups out there like Union Rescue Mission which do not accept government operating money and do not permit drug and alcohol use, and they have had tremendous results. I've been working with them, so I've seen that firsthand, and so certainly want to bring that to your attention as well. Anything else, Susan Shelley, that you'd like to mention about this Prop 1 or anything else that's come up since the election?
Well, the main thing is to watch out for new homelessness taxes because Governor Newsom signed 2 pieces of legislation last September which will enable the county to put new taxes on the ballot and enable the Measure H sales tax increase to be doubled and made permanent. So that is probably going to be on the ballot, and we're going to have to watch very closely on that because throwing money at the same solutions is not a solution. And we really need better management, better government oversight of all of this, and not just throwing money into the same project, home key housing, which is what Proposition 1 does. So these problems can be fixed. There are solutions. But as long as we have this housing first principle, as long as we won't build anything with more than 16 beds, this is going to continue to be a crisis. And it doesn't have to be. We can fix this.
Susan, thank you very much for that comprehensive update on this important subject. That is Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Friday nights right here on your favorite station, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Let's get into high gear now and talk about cars. The Biden administration announcing the strictest regulation on vehicle exhaust emissions ever introduced here in the U.S. in an effort to accelerate the auto industry's shift to, guess what, electric cars. Let's bring in Lauren Fix now, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast, our go-to car expert here. Lauren, thank you very much for taking the call here. It looks like the industry groups say this regulation will make new gas-powered vehicles unavailable or prohibitively expensive for most Americans. Give us your reaction to this big news this week.
Well, they made it look initially like it was an improvement to the original regulation of getting rid of all electric or all gasoline-powered vehicles by 2030. But if you look a little deeper, there's even more regulation. And that starts off with the EP. I love what they call it. They're curbing. It makes it sound like everybody wants to be on this. Curbing gas-powered vehicle tailpipe emissions as part of a broader effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and combat global warming. It sounds wonderful. Sounds like, this is great, but there's an impact to this. The new regulations are just moving it 2 years to 2032. And then they want 67% of the cars on the road to be all electric that's sold. Right now, just to give you an idea, there's only 8%. And within 8 years, they want it to be 67%, which is not even possible because the grid can't support it. We've already got electric problems when it comes to California in general. The whole country couldn't support it, no matter what state this is. But on top of that, you know what's going to happen. More regulations, more safety regulations, the kill switch we've talked about, keep adding on all these additional expenses. And to give you an idea what this means, every car manufacturer takes a loss on their electric vehicles, between $6,000 at the minimum to as high as $40,000. So they're going to have to make up for that loss somehow, and they're going to increase the price of cars. More regulations, more safety features, lightning cars to make the ones that are plug-in hybrids and gasoline have better fuel efficiency. All of that's going to equal very expensive cars. And what goes with that? Higher insurance rates.
It also should be noted that the industry folks brought you and me into the conversation, the consumer, pointing to slower EV sales growth and objecting to that draft of the rules that you just mentioned. And remember, it was big news. What was this, over a year ago, when GM actually revealed that they'd only sold 2 of those electric Hummers, right? Any updates on those sales numbers?
They're still sitting on lots. If you want to know what electric vehicles are doing, and I know it's difficult when you're in LA because typically there's a higher demand in California and especially LA than there is in other areas of the country. But if you're ever anywhere else or not in LA County and you start driving around, you'll see dealers have them filled on lots, no matter what the brand. And if you walk into a dealer and say, hey, what's up with that electric vehicle, they'll get very excited because they'll do anything to sell those vehicles. And also there's a huge impact to those who purchased electric cars, by the way. If you're looking to sell them, to give you an idea, like a Porsche Taycan is almost $200,000, not your average electric vehicle, but they've already lost $100,000 of value. I have a friend who went to trade his in to get rid of his electric car, find something hybrid, and they said, we don't want it. We don't want your vehicle. And then when he went to look up its value, he had lost $100,000 of value. And it's not just the most expensive ones, it's all of them. Even Teslas have lost their value on resale because consumers don't want used electric cars. So if you purchased one, it's probably not your best choice for future reference. I'd consider leasing something. That way at the end of 3 years, you can walk away from it. But if not, the problem is that you're stuck with a car that nobody wants on trade, not even the dealer you bought it from.
Are they viewed as disposable cars?
Well, I wouldn't say disposable. I think the problem is when you buy an electric car, of course you're excited. You think this is a great idea, and that's great. You should be able to buy one if you want one. Your insurance rates are higher. Your payments for the vehicle are higher. And then, of course, you've got the issue, which is a big problem in LA area, which is charging. If you can't charge at home, maybe you live in a rental or you just don't have a garage, that means you're forced to use public charging, which is a big challenge. And fast charging is only available as public charging. And that's the problem when you have to wait in line to charge, or someone parks their car there, which I've had happen to me in LA. They plug in the car and they disappear, which is great because 20 minutes later the car is charged and they don't care. And so that puts a burden on everybody else. There's not a fair share as far as people sharing the charging stations. It's been a big problem, and I don't know if we're going to have a resolution to it because I think people I think since COVID, people have really changed their opinion on sharing things like that. They're just like, whatever, I'll get back to it.
Very interesting, and looks like we have a rematch shaping up here between President Biden and President Trump, and certainly President Trump has a completely different view on EV policy. What has he said recently about what he would do if he takes office on the EV front?
Yeah, I have a story on that on my Car Coach Reports YouTube channel, and what's interesting about it is President Trump has already said, I'm going to put 100% tariff on any Chinese cars that want to come in because that would hurt our economy, it would hurt workers, it would hurt literally every sub-supplier of the car industry. But he also said he's going to take away that mandate for electric vehicles and let you make a choice. And when he says drill, baby, drill, what that really means to you is the cost of gasoline will drop. And in California in general, the taxes that are on every single gallon of fuel is absolutely absurd. And think about the cost going back down to what it was 4 years ago. That would be really good for people because then you can go buy food or go on vacation. Right now, we're all in a crunch, well, we can't spend any money on anything other than just day-to-day living, and still some of us still struggle with that. If Biden gets back into office, we already know what's going to happen. They're going to make it so expensive for you to own a gasoline-powered vehicle. They're going to tax you by the mile. They're going to make your registrations higher. They're going to make the gas taxes higher. And the gas pedal of the electric vehicle, or the accelerator pedal, will be to the floor. And the mandates are going to start coming fast and furious. So be careful who you vote for.
Lauren, thank you very much for that update. Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Record-shattering day for the stock market right across the board for the Dow, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ, all at record highs for the second day in a row. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back tomorrow at 4 with more Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Get an inside look at Hollywood with Michael Rosenbaum.
Let's get inside of my buddy, Kumail Nanjiani. When you talk about Eternals and it wasn't the response that you were hoping, how did that affect you?
Marvel thought that we'd be going on a wave of raves, and it wasn't true. The reviews were really bad.
And you were aware of it while you were on tour?
Yeah, I was too aware of it. And so very intentionally, I did start counseling. Emily says that I do have trauma from it.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.